Well, hello and welcome to today's webinar. I am delighted to be joined by Manchester Airport Group's Manchester Airport Massive in the studio today. And we are going to be talking all things, different stories, shared goals, and really about building truly inclusive workplaces. I've got the best panel in the world, and those people who know me know it's always been my dream to work at the airport. And please check out the podcast series as well, which recently went live as well. So please catch up on that, because so many stories, so many takeaways, and so many just like real top tips and hacks. And that's what we're going to get out of today. So in the next 45 minutes, we're going to be talking about all manner of different things. So whether it's how we embed inclusion, intersectionality, taking it beyond sort of just the language and the surface level into really kind of truly inclusive. If you've got any conversations or any chats or any comments that you want to put in, please drop it in I'm saying it like it's right here, but you know what I mean. Please drop it in the chat and we will keep that conversation going. But I'm delighted to be joined by Chris, Alicia and Rosie. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because, and again, it is my fascination with this world. What do you do in plain English that people will understand? What do you do?
So, Chris Woodruff, Managing Director, Manchester Airport. But being the Managing Director of the airport means that you're kind of ultimately responsible for, firstly, keeping everyone safe, keeping everyone secure, and then making sure they have a great experience as they fly through the airport, pun intended, get on planes and get off on their holidays, visiting families and friends, or going on business trips.
Just that little job then?
Just that little job. 3,500 people in the team, but probably 20,000 people on site, and you have a responsibility for keeping all of them safe and secure. And
all of the stakeholders that go with it.
There's, on a busy day, 120,000 passengers would fly in and out of the airport.
Wow. Well, you look so young.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure the viewers will agree necessarily, but
you will put it in the chat.
Don't put that.
Should we do a poll right now?
That's nice. Yeah.
Alicia.
Hi.
Now, you will have heard Alicia on the last episode of the podcast, and now she's here back because so much knowledge and insight. And check out her doctor's surgery. You've got to listen to the podcast to find out what I mean.
So for those who are listening who don't know me, my name's Alicia McDonnell. I'm the Group Head of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion for Manchester Airport Group. And what do I do? So in a nutshell, I look at the overarching business strategy, the individual vision, mission and purpose for the different functions and departments across our 3 airports, and help them become barrierless in the sense that everyone, regardless of their role or team, can thrive at MAG in whatever way that looks for them.
And that's a lot of people, isn't it? As Chris has just said, it's a lot.
More than I ever thought before I got into the role. A lot of people.
Not mission easy,
no,
but you're on it.
We're on it.
And Rosie, best job in the world you've got, I know.
You reckon?
Yeah, I
do. So I'm Rosie, the Airport Control Director at Manchester Airport. And effectively what my teams do is work with all of the other operational teams on the ground to ensure what we call stable operations on the day. If you're a passenger moving through the airport, effectively that means that we try and ensure that there's no incidents, disruption, events that happen and occur. We overcome them and you fly through, fly off, and that's as safe and seamless as it can be.
Now, I think we need to have a count of how many times the word fly is used today. What do you think?
That's a better poll than the one about whether
it is
or
a better
not
poll, but see, you've just brought it back to the table again now, Chris. But when we talk about different stories and shared goals, what does that mean to you? You know, because you've just talked, it's a big operation, isn't it, this? So how do you make sure... I'm going to come to you first, Alicia. How do you, she's like that, no way. But how do we make sure that when we are building those workplaces where everyone, irrespective of background, identity, can thrive? Mm-hmm. It isn't, like I just said in your intro, it's not an easy job.
It's not an easy job. And I think the first one is acknowledging that it's not an easy job, which we do, and that's okay. And there's no start, middle and end, which I think is important for businesses to have a goal and a vision that keeps you moving forward, but know that will continually evolve, and that's the right thing. In terms of the strategy that we have at MAG and how we got to that point of being comfortable with it was having a targeted and tailored approach. So I talked about it a little bit on the pod, was about ensuring that it's meaningful to that role, to that team, to that department, to that airport. It's got to be meaningful. It's got to be tailored. And then that way, when everyone walks through the door every morning, it's not, I need to have an add-on of inclusion or equity or diversity to my thinking. It's just embedded in what I do. I know what it means, and I take action every day because of that integration.
I think that's a key word, isn't it? Or key phrase is taking action every day. Because although you come with the title of this responsibility coming to you, it's not just your role, right?
Absolutely not.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Exhausted. That'd be a long day.
It'd be a very, very long day. It's absolutely not my role, but I'm lucky enough to work in an organisation that's open to, breaking down those barriers and ensuring that we build that accountability in. And it's going to take time. It's not going to happen in 1 hour, 1 week, or 1 day. But that's the best bit, because the opportunity is in front of us and we're going after it.
And how is this within your everyday, Rosie? Because I know this is inclusion, equity is really important to you.
Yeah.
But how do you make it your everyday?
I think for us and my teams, we ultimately have to work with everybody across the airport, right? So whether that's somebody who also works for Manchester Airport, whether that's our other stakeholders, it might be passengers at the time actually during disruption. And so it's quite a natural environment ultimately for hierarchies to be broken down and for everybody to be able to bring their experience, their current ideas, their sort of innovation in the moment to ensure that we run a stable operation every day. As part of running an airport, you can't always plan for things that may or may not happen. You do your very best to kind of foresee those things, but having different people's experiences and ideas and I guess
it's that lived experience.
Lived
isn't it?
experience.
Everyone has a different experience.
Helps.
And allowing that to come to the fore, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Chris, this is a huge organisation, massive employer, all the stakeholders that we've referred to. But how can you make sure that the policies and the strategy that you're laying out really tries to reflect everyone? Because it's not a tick box exercise. It's absolutely must never be a tick box exercise.
I think you have to have conversations, actually. And if you think about how Alicia put the strategy together, that wasn't done in a dark room with her, trying to figure it out on her own. She went out into the organisation and listened to our journey makers, which is what we call the people that work at Manchester Airport Group, from every part of the organisation, and took all their feedback in and then pulled together something that recognises where we are today and where we'd like to go to next. But to Alicia's point, it's not a from A to B job done. This is just something that we're going to continue to get better and better at. And I think what's exciting, to Alicia's point, is that as you get better and better at our ability to be inclusive and to drive equity into the organisation, then the organisation itself gets better and better. And in the end, that means that a passenger flying through the airport has an even better experience. And from my perspective, that's super.
And that's where I think that curiosity is key. The listening to people going out. And you talked about innovation, Rosie. Innovation isn't tech and drones all the time, is it? And I know we're going to be speaking to the Mag Tech team in a future webinar, but it's important to hear from your team and the individuals that you come across on your day-to-day and week-to-week basis to feed that in as well, because there's no one's there, are they, in any organisation on this inclusivity track? There's no sort of finish line. So that listening to your team's really key, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think in order to be able to do that, you've got to make sure that you can create environments that feel safe for different individuals, right? And so what might feel safe for somebody sort of on the shop floor, so to speak, versus in the boardroom or, in a one-to-one management office, I think just making sure that you're in a position to offer a safe environment for people to be able to bring their ideas to the forefront is something that definitely I take into work every day. And
talking about taking to work every day, this is a lovely seamless link, that, isn't it? On your pod, Alicia, we talked about, is that multiple identities, and you can refer as intersectionality or whichever language, but there's something really important about bringing that whole self into work. But how do you manage the multiple layers? Because you can identify as many different things, and you did on your pod. Quickly check back on Elise's pod. But everyone's different, and everyone's got different, I'm thinking about my mum factor today, or I'm thinking about my neurodivergent mindset, or I'm thinking of my caring responsibilities, or I'm thinking all those different things. Bringing that whole self into work, it's tricky, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So intersectionality in a nutshell is just you have overlapping experiences, beliefs, characteristics, identities, which we all do. We're all intersectional human beings. So for me, in my world, it's super important that we become as barrierless as possible for those people. So to your point, mum, disabled, parent and carer, whatever it may be, on any given day, the environment's not going to change, but how we operate in it can. So that's why we need to become super agile, super fluid in kind of our policies, practices and our processes. And that's the journey that we're going on. And I think it's a recognition for businesses that what's that future state that you want to get to? Well, we're an airport, we're the hub of diversity. You're not going to find another business who basically operates and functions on diversity like we do. So therefore, there's a recognition that, we're going to get the best as we can at this once our organisation is reflective of those communities that we serve. We've got an absolute commitment to that at Manchester Airport Group, but we also have a recognition that we're not there yet. So from a talent point of view and how our organisation looks, we just need to stay committed. And, if we haven't got that diversity of thought, whether it's identity, belief, experience, characteristic, whatever it may be at the moment in our direct teams, doesn't mean that we can't get it. We just need to be a bit more agile at the moment to get those voices heard, to Rosie's point, to Chris's point, and give those opportunities for people to, speak up and speak out and across the org.
And I think because people will be watching today, they could be watching from within the Manchester Airport groups, could be watching externally, small business, larger business, and everything in between. And this goes to everyone really, is how can leaders make a space for that authenticity without getting people to fit in? Because you talked about an agile environment, but is there, because sometimes it's simple things. We talked about curiosity and listening, but what is it that, any top tips that you think that leaders watching out there who are managing, whether it be a small team or a large team, can make space for that authenticity, allowing people to be their whole true self?
There's something for me about trying to walk in somebody else's shoes. Because the challenge is you're naturally inclined to do things that would make you feel comfortable, that would make you feel like you could be open, and just understanding that is different for every person in the organisation, and trying to find different routes in. So we had a Kind Cafe a couple of weeks ago as part of National Inclusion Week, and that was done in one of the restrooms for the security officers, and turned up, got some pastries, and we just brought to life some of the college communities that the security officers could join. And what was amazing was to see the number of them who had no idea. You can send out as many emails about these things as you like, but actually if you want to engage that community, you have to go into the restroom and have a conversation. But when we did, people were like, oh yeah, I have care responsibilities. I'd like to get involved in the mental health group, and they've joined them, and we saw the people actually make those commitments in the moment, which was super. And
so that's the simplicity of being visible and going, this is for you. It's an awareness, because again, we all get bombarded with lots of emails, and I know in an organisation as yourself, people are not always at their laptop or superphone computer to get those emails. So when you get to it, you might miss those. So it's trying sometimes just to be a bit more creative or innovative about how we pass that message on about what's available. Is there anything that you've done within your team or across sort of the different groups you come into contact with, Rosie, that you think that you've seen sort of leaders do to make their environments more inclusive?
Yeah, I think both personally for me with leaders that I've worked with, as well as for myself now as a leader, it's about actually leading on that point and showing up and being a different Rosie on different days, depending on the different contexts, whether that's work context, life context. And I suppose being comfortable in being vulnerable with that, because that then allows my teams to feel that they can do the same, that it's okay to be human, that we can sort of fix forward from things if we need to. I think that's made a huge difference for me, for the leaders that I've worked with, but also for the approach that I take with my team.
If you look at what you did, so Rosie's in charge of the duty management team who run the airport, right? So the most senior person, 24 hours a day, who's there to mop up whatever drama occurs. And so it was sort of historic practice that you could never get all of them together on a day and have them all as one team and engage them as a group. But what I liked in terms of what Rosie did was say, I don't subscribe to that view. I'm sure we can make it happen. And when you set yourself that objective, then do you know what? Rosie did make it happen. And I don't know, from your perspective, how powerful was it to get that group together?
Yeah, it was huge. And I think it was huge for that team. They also lent in and made it happen, because it is hard to take them offsite and still run an airport at the same time. But it's been a different sort of dynamic within the team now when it comes to sharing ideas. They don't run as individuals anymore. They run ideas past one another, and they bring things, through the team as a team. Yeah. Whereas before it was effectively a set of individuals that all had a huge amount of respect for one another, and ultimately were part of a team, but it didn't quite have the same sort of gel that it has now.
So you walked the walk as a leader by enabling. You went into the kind cafes and made information accessible. Through that enablement, you're now creating and encouraging that knowledge exchange and that sharing of ideas, and nobody thinks it's a bad idea to speak up and lean into things. Yeah. And that's how stuff gets done. That's what makes your job easier.
It does. And I think what Chris and Rosie spoke about there is how I feel, which is the best leaders are the ones that don't subscribe to culture fit, but they subscribe to culture facts. And the culture fact is that diversity thrives wherever you are, whatever team, whatever your purpose is. It gets us closer to innovation. It gets us closer to that commercial customer. It's just business 101 at the heart of it. And with the things that we've brought in this year, such as, the kind cafes, last year for National Inclusion Week, I wasn't in the organisation, but it's a age-old problem for a lot of businesses who have frontline operational colleagues. We can't get to them, we can't connect, we can't engage. Kind Cafes had the ability this year to reach over 8,000 colleagues, and that was just for having that mindset of cultural fact. We are a diverse organisation. We have to bring innovation, newness and initiatives to the operation. That's exactly what we did. And we even went a step further in creating and setting up Aviation for All, where we connected with, industry ED&I leaders from BA to a Virgin, etc. And we started having open, non-competitive conversations about how we move the industry forward.
Because it's not competitive to be, everyone wants to work in and run and lead and be part of great organisations. So it shouldn't be anyone is better than other. It's making it work for your organisation. And I love the culture fact as opposed to just the culture fit. And I think this takes away, I hear, my team will know I hate the word initiative, because often I think it's something that flies in. There you go. It flies in, and then it can equally fly out, right? It doesn't stick. It doesn't have that keep factor. And part of, you see a lot of inclusion strategies and this, and it sits on a shelf or it sits in a board pack, and it's moving beyond it. Now, you've just given 2 complete examples of how you take that from it's deeds, not words, right? Now, how do you create that at scale and consistently, Chris? Because, we talked about the size and the scope of the organisation, because they're 2 quite different things as well. The things you just highlighted, the kind cafe and the, bringing all those the duty managers together. That's people power. But how do you keep going?
You have to,
because it's never done, right?
you have to build momentum, and there isn't one panacea to cure all ills either. So it's not like canned cafes are suddenly the answer, and that's how all of our problems are going to get solved. There are lots of different things that people will do that run from getting a team together who've never been together to a kind cafe to senior people demonstrating some vulnerability to allow a message to get out that says that's okay. You have to work across a number of different areas, and that's what Alicia, I think, brings to the organisation, because it's not that there's a group of people there who don't want to do different things and want to make a difference, but what they need is someone to help guide them in terms of what are the things that we've seen work in other organisations before that we can bring to the party. And it's also not seeing the subjects in a kind of narrow way. So when you're having a conversation about keeping people safe, or keeping people secure, or delivering a great experience to our passengers, or generating a great commercial outcome, that's not a separate conversation from having a diverse workforce or an inclusive organisation. Actually, you have to get yourself to a place where it's because of having a diverse workforce and it's because of having an inclusive organisation that you deliver those outcomes.
It goes back to being, it's part of the everyday.
Exactly.
It's part of the everyday, and it's part of the everyday. It's that ripple effect, isn't it? And I think, and Alicia, you've had, so much experience across this area in previous roles as well before Manchester Airport Group. But what do you see as the difference with truly inclusive leaders that are not just another initiative or another program, but what's the difference that makes them good leaders?
Living the values, living the dream. The best leaders are, I can't remember if I talked about it on the pod, but I say
You've
it
been on a pod.
I've been on a pod
talked about
here.
that, have we?
Yeah. Very quickly, I flew in and out. I say it all the time, and it is the rule of three, and I'll never stop saying it. It's the sponsor, mentor, and coaching, particularly for minoritized and underrepresented groups. I think if you are disenfranchised or part of a community that's disenfranchised, you can smell unauthenticity on leaders really, really quickly. And we need to get to a point where there's that investment, and it's not a monetary investment, it's a time investment. And the biggest, changes in my career have always been through time investment on having a two-way reciprocal conversation about, this is how I see the world, this is how you see the world, and actually how do our worlds collide to make it a better place for everyone. And particularly for us as an airport group, we're not exclusive. Manchester Airport Group, along with every other airport, welcomes everyone in society through its doors. So the best leaders, particularly in our sector and our world, need to be creating those pathways for consistent conversation. That's how you'll get more representation in leadership. That's how you'll help develop the skills of others. And we're human by nature. We want to help people. And what better way than plugging that into, people who may not be where you are today.
Chris?
I think Marlon has done a podcast.
He has, yeah.
So, and I mentor Marlon.
And Marlon's he's at Stansted Airport, isn't he? And he was on one of our previous webinars. It's like a cross collaboration here, a cross references. And Marlon was on, we do an advocacy and allyship webinar. So please go back. We've got so much content out there on Watch Again. And any questions, please drop it in.
And it's been great to meet him, and I think hearing some of his story that he'll have shared is inspiring from my perspective, and it's been really nice to watch his career develop at Manchester Airport Group, and he's onto his I think third role in Stansted now since he's arrived, and it's it's that time that Alicia talked about, and for him to feel like, the managing director of Manchester Airport wants to see him be successful and wants to give their time to help advocate for him.
And advocacy is key, right? Advocacy, whether we're advocating for early careers talent, whether we're advocating for ethnicity, whether we're advocating for gender, it all comes. But if you were mentoring, I didn't realise you were mentoring Marlon, and he was great. Actually, to be honest, the only two people ever in our webinars to come in ties. So was that part of the mentoring pact, is what I think.
He has excellent dress sense. That you can have that.
No, I was going to say, because I always think mentoring, and I think you're right, mentoring, coaching, sponsorship, they're not the same, right?
No,
and I think
not.
the blurred lines can often be challenging. But what have you learned most from Marlon, apart from the dress sense?
He's one of the people who've given me a bit of an insight into what people are telling themselves inside their head versus how they're behaving in front of you, and and because some of what he's sort of battling with inside his head, I mean, you don't see it on the surface, and it's only by having the conversation that I've got a sense of it, and it has its root in his story, and I think just getting that insight has been incredibly powerful, because it's left me thinking, it's a cliche, right? Don't judge a book by its cover, but it was a really good reminder that what you see of someone in front of you isn't necessarily what all of their story. And in the context of inclusivity, in the context of all of the different aspects that make up this person who's come to work today, remembering that is incredibly important.
And that's why I think any relationship you have in a mentoring capacity is always two-way. There's always something to give, and there's always something to gain, and there's always something to make you stop in your tracks and think, actually now, as part of being that inclusive leader, not only just, embracing his dress style, but it's actually putting that, actually, what can I do? Because, I think it is about what we do. And I think, Rosie, you're in a really fast-moving part of the organisation, and you've talked about things can go wrong, right? It can happen. The weather can come into play. Humans can come into play. Technology, mechanics. There's me sounding like I know what I'm talking about. But, all those things can come into play. How do you maintain or strive for that inclusive leadership when things are all going a bit crazy and you're trying to, as you said earlier, like that fixing forward? How do you kind of try and go, right, okay, I'm going to try and stay above it and keep pedaling?
Yeah, I think I always come back to the vulnerability piece. I think it's quite easy to put leadership on a pedestal, and whether that's the boss or it's me as part of my oversight of the hub, but we're all human, and there'll be something else maybe going on in my life at the same time as there's something going on in the airport. And being open with that and vulnerable with that means that you're open to the support that you might need. Other people can step in and help, and it allows other people to also say that they need help as well. So yeah, I always come back to kind of, as much as I bring myself to work and allow people to see the things about me that are unique or different, they'll then reciprocate.
But I think that comes back to enabling again, isn't it? If you're showing your true self and your vulnerable self, even when things are all a little bit. And I think when we did a piece of research a few years ago, and it was coming out of the pandemic, which obviously didn't impact you guys at all, right? But there was the whole bit about talking about the leadership, and one of the most valuable traits out of that was that clarity and vulnerability. I think at a time where that was the kind of the most important traits at that time, it's not sort of kind of the stick as opposed to the carrot. It's being truly sort of taking people with you. And just sort of moving into, the people factor is your everyday business, as well as all the other things that come into play. But when you're talking around recruitment, You know, you are talking so many different individuals that you need for your business. How do you make sure that inclusivity starts right at the start, probably even before the recruitment process? How do you make sure it's there on day one, not something that you go, oh, wait a minute, we've got to do an inclusivity thing here and some unconscious bias here and this over here. How do we make sure it starts, or how do you make sure it starts right?
So it was a very early assessment when I joined the business and was measuring the ED&I effectiveness at MAG, that inclusive recruitment was something that we could benefit from.
Yeah.
We've taken steps this year and audited that process with the support of an external partner as well, because I recognise that, you know, you can mark your own homework in this space, and sometimes you just need that diversity of thought, a different point of view. So we've kind of got that pathway already and that timeline set out on what we need to do and what our opportunities are. But again, it goes to back to that point that you made before, that it's not the work of just me, it's the work of the whole talent team at Manchester Airport Group. And I'm excited to see how that evolves and how it comes through. But what I will say from like a leadership point of view is we have to start getting to a place of being comfortable that we're not perfect, but we want progress and we're going to measure that journey. And it's about having commitments to things such as diverse shortlists. So if you're recruiting for different leadership or senior leadership positions, that we're brave enough to say, actually, we only go to recruit when our shortlists look representative of kind of the demographic that we're serving, because that's what we want to see in the organisation. Will it work every single time from the beginning? No, but we just keep getting better and better and keeping that commitment true. And I think that's where we need to go.
And not being afraid to try different things. And as the managing director with all those plates spinning, recruitment is one of those key bits, because the secret of the great people are the people that make those journeys memorable and successful. You
first of all have to ask yourself whether even the role that you're recruiting for is a fair role to go out and recruit. Then you have to write a role profile that is written in a way that doesn't, in an unconscious way, say to certain people, do you know what, this role isn't for you. Because if you get that wrong, then you've got no hope of having a diverse shortlist, because you've killed off the diversity even before you've got a shortlist pulled together. Then I think another big challenge is the sort of the interview process, the wanting to recruit people who are like me, in inverted commas, and because they'll be a good fit, again, in inverted commas, and challenging yourself to say, do you know what, in a room of people, whoever the team, whatever they're doing, you'll get a better outcome if you have a diverse team who are looking to deliver that outcome, and genuinely believing that, rather than, to Alicia's point, just saying it because it's you sort of have to say it. You have, if you're really going to be successful, you actually have to believe it, and because belief, I think, is incredibly important. If I think back to when I joined Manchester Airport 3.5 years ago, just coming out of the pandemic, it was tricky times, and the thing that was missing most was belief that it would ever be better, and that's the thing that I went after tackling early on. But once you have belief, then now you've just got some problems to solve, and that's the easy bit. But if you don't believe that either that a problem is solvable, or indeed there is a problem, then you're never going to fix it. So belief in this context is incredibly important, because we need people to believe that this is a better way for everyone, and we need people to believe that it is not right today, and it's something that we need to improve.
And it strikes me, you highlighted and advocated for what Rosie has done when she brought all those duty managers together, because it had never been done. It's often easier to say, I can't do it, there's no time, it's never been done before. What made you think you could? I'm going to rephrase that actually, because it's you clearly shown there was the leadership that you were offered clearly enabled you to do that.
I think honestly my team made me think that I could. So they had a desire to do it. All that they needed was for me to say, yes, we can, rather than, no, we've never done it before. And by giving them that baton to say, we can make it happen, it allowed them to do what they needed to do to make it happen, to be honest. So they just needed somebody to back it.
So then where did you go? What was because then if you've got your team going, right, let's go to bat on this, and then you've got to go through a series of doors, hoops.
Yeah.
Was that easier than you thought?
Yeah, I think we've got leadership team around us that are supportive of ensuring that we do the right thing as a team. And so it was never questioned that something like that couldn't be done. It just hadn't been done. And I think that was the difference between we've never done it before, so we don't know how to, or we feel that we can't, as opposed to somebody just being like, well, let's go after it.
And it feels like you're quite humble. I think Rosie's quite humble in this, but that's a massive achievement to do that. And it strikes me that if we're hearing about that here on the webinar today, there'll be other, if you like, inclusive leadership in action like that. And I never want to oversimplify things, but sometimes you have to. You can't over-engineer things. Was that as simple as just going, well, why not? Well, what's the worst that could happen, kind of thing?
The hard bit was choosing to make it happen. The easy bit was making it happen, because that's just mathematics. Then you're okay. Well, if they're not going to be here, we need somebody else who can cover. Okay, well, who could do that? How can we make that happen? Let's go and have a conversation with them. Would you be okay with doing this? Of course, I'd love to. It'd be great if that team to be able to get together. I'd love to be able to help you. And you get a few people come together who are offering their support to make this happen, and suddenly it happens. That actually, particularly if you're in airport operations, your day to day is solving problems. Once you've got a problem to solve, well, then everyone's off and running, and it just goes, and they just get it done. The hard bit is choosing that you're going to solve that problem.
I think it reinforces Chris's point around belief, and the problem solving just happens then, right? So if you've got the belief and you've got the drive with the team, we solve problems every day.
So this feels like a recipe, right? So this is a recipe that you used and it solved that problem. Is that not something that people watching, whether they're in the organisation or watching from smaller, larger organisations out there, surely it's belief.
And that's listening. What makes the future exciting, is because if we're choosing to believe in an inclusive future, and we're choosing to go and solve, I don't want to call it a problem, because it's just not the right terminology.
It's an opportunity, right?
But it is something that you can go after, and the going after of it isn't the hard bit. Pulling a kind cafe together without wishing to make it sound easier than it was, it isn't in the end the difficult bit. The difficult bit is to go, we're going to have this thing, we're going to call it a kind cafe, and we're going to put it in a crew room, because I guarantee there'll be a dozen people who'll come up with 17 reasons why it can't be done and it won't work and nobody will come. And, and you just have to push through all of that and get on with believing it's something that's going to make a difference, not the panacea to cure all ills, but something that makes a difference. And in the end, we'll make progress, not by doing one enormous thing, but by doing a million small things.
It's the small things, and we always talk about that. It's the 1 millimeter of difference. It's the 1 millimeter that all then add up to those big things that you go, wow. It feels like, I don't know if you've ever watched Ted Lasso, but it's that whole believe moment. This is the belief. It is that belief. Don't go and watch Ted Lasso, watch our podcast instead. Now, we talk about metrics and accountability, but it doesn't tell the whole story, does it? I think it is key and it is important. But what do you think, Alicia, that leaders should really measure if they want to really understand inclusion deeply?
I'm a massive advocate of measures. I've actually built a brand somehow at Manchester Airport Group on data, and it's funny at this point because I always hark back to, well, it's that you said we did. So that is kind of what I did when I joined the business, measuring that ED&I effectiveness. You said this is how we see the world, and this is what we're going to do about it. Again, it's treating inclusion like you would any other business area, like it's tech, like it's finance. You would never go into a meeting and not have any data points. You would never not measure your progress. It should be treated like every other area. From a leadership point of view, you've got the practicalities. From a professional point of view, so how do you measure that through? So, procurement, inclusive suppliers in your supply chain, that innovative tools, AI, all the rest of it. You can measure the ED&I effectiveness, whatever your area. From a personal point of view as a leader, there's key things, key reflections, I would say, that can go into your toolkit as a leader in inclusive leadership. And I'm trying to think of a few off my head. So leaving the ladder. So actually, on a yearly basis, I get, and I'm making this up now, I get 50 opportunities to talk, to do something, to connect, which amplifies me and my brand and my visibility. I have 5 people who I sponsor, mentor, coach. Of those 50, I'm going to give 5 opportunities to them.
Pass it on.
And I pass it on. And I leave the ladder, and I do that every year, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until actually I don't do too much because I'm exactly where I need to be. And these people are on that journey. So leaving the ladder is 1. 2 could be the sponsoring, mentoring, networking. I have different people who I support. It could be your network. Everyone says it, your network is your net worth, and it goes into the recruitment side of things as well. If, say, on your executive team or Rosie's team, Christine, whoever's listening's team, say there's 10 people, and each of you sponsor, mentor, or coach someone, that's 30 people. That's a talent accelerator program in and of itself that's cost nothing, is time investment, and you're going to amplify and lift those groups to where they need to be. It's about what you said before about not over-engineering, simplifying in a common sense approach and going, what do we want to achieve and what's the quickest, easiest, simplest, cost-effective way to do it?
And this is the whole thing. It's not just your responsibility, is it? And if nobody holds the accountability for inclusion,
That's right.
then it's just going to stall. So how do you make it? Or not make it, because that's like being voluntold, not volunteered. But how is that sort of communicated that it is everyone's every day?
Yeah. So it starts with the evolution of the ED&I strategy, which we have got, which is every journey matters. And that lives not just internally, but externally on corporate website. We've done that in a meaningful way because we don't want to hide away from kind of what we've signed up to. We want to make sure that, our colleagues, our customers, our communities and our passengers, can see that and have that view. In terms of the individual accountability, we've got that pathway, we've got that roadmap, and now everybody can see what it means for them. So, without a bit of a sneak peek, which people can see online, we've got 4 key pillars, but underneath that, it's meaningful for procurement, sustainability, IT, finance, operations. It's every journey matters for a reason because it does.
It's like a translation. It's
Absolutely.
like a translator, isn't it?
Yeah.
Service. And you talked about the small things. And I think just as we come to close out the webinar today, what is the one thing for people watching, whether they're watching today or they're watching on catch up, that they can do? What's the one small thing that every leader or every person, you've given a great example, Alicia, of you can do these things, you can do these things. People might go, I haven't got the time to mentor, it's not my skill set. But I can open a door. I can press forward on that email because I can't do it and I think you might be good for it. We can do that. But what would you say are the top tips that you've done, Rosie, or you've seen in action that goes, that really makes an inclusive leader because that person did that?
I think I liked Alicia's ladder analogy because I think it's something that we can all do, right? There's opportunities always available to all of us, and we don't have to do all of them. And usually we can't do all of them, but making sure that it's not just a no thank you, sorry, can't do, actually passing that baton on to somebody else in the team is something that's quite simple.
And then equally, the person who's asked you then kind of values your input, and they know that they're going to get a different diverse aspect as well into that. What would you say is that top tip?
Well, the thing I come back to actually is the mentoring. There are probably 3 people, so Alicia mentors 5 people. So I clearly need to go and find 2 more people to mentor.
It's not a competition.
No, but I'm slightly competitive. And watching their careers grow and maybe doing it. It's not mentoring to specific individuals, but as you think about an organisation of 3,500 people and you're looking to grow it and build it, just trying to steer it in a way that helps drive a more diverse outcome, I guess. And
sometimes it can be, sometimes you think you haven't got time, so it can be as much as giving time. It can be just something as much as you've got a big footprint in the airport and wherever you're working. You've always got something you go, well, just go for a walk and talk, even if it's just round the corridor or from this side to this. Just actually having that time to pass on, I think, can just be a part of that change. What excites you most about the future? Because you're a very ambitious organisation, and you've talked about Marlon, you've talked about the people that you've enabled, mentored, your team, Rosie, as well. What excites you most about the future? Because we said at the start that no one is there in this whole inclusive leadership. No one's there because we've got to keep innovating. But what excites you about the future? Because the future of inclusion lies with the people that you're bringing through and investing.
From a Manchester Airport perspective, when I look ahead 5-10 years, the opportunity to work for an organisation that is making such a difference in our region, the economic benefit that Manchester Airport generates goes straight into the region in which it sits. And so as you see that grow and be bigger and better, then its impact on that region becomes bigger and better. And that, from my perspective, is the thing that I am most excited about, is being able to make a difference, actually not just at an individual level, but to start to make a difference on a kind of regional level.
It's a ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a ripple effect. Rosie, Alicia, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. Some of the key takeaways for me, I think there's something around the culture fact, not fit. Mm-hmm. We can keep going, I'm not a culture, but let's base it on that. I think data comes into it as well. Mm-hmm. I think the whole enabling, it's simple. Everyone can listen. That can be half the battle in enabling. Ask questions. Go into spaces and ask the questions. Sometimes is the best way. Putting surveys out will work for some people, but actually go and have those conversations and ask the questions and understand and listen and then take action. It's deeds, not words, isn't it? I think that help. But being completely, we haven't used it as many times as fly, but innovative. I think inclusive leadership has to be innovation in action as well, by listening, by being curious, by enabling and cracking on in true Northern spirit. Thank you so much, Manchester Airport. Massive. Thank you all for watching. If you've got any questions or anything you would like to carry on the conversation, because we never talk about this just as being one discussion, it's what we take forward. Drop us a note. I know everyone here is very active on LinkedIn as well, so please drop in and let's keep the conversation. Let's swap some of those top tips. It's not a competition. We all want to work in great inclusive environments. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we will see you on the next webinar.